Welcome everyone to our March 2021 Memory Lab Network webinar. I'm thrilled today to have Libby Hopfauf from the, MePops, Moving Image Preservation of Puget Sound.
Yep.
Oh my God. You're the audiovisual archivist there, right? Program manager, audiovisual archivist.
Yes.
And you're going to be talking about a project based there called DVRescue and all about MiniDV for us today. So please take it away.
Yeah, I am Libby Hopfauf from Moving Image Preservation of Puget Sound. Briefly, I'm just going to go over who we are and why we exist. As I'm sure most of you are aware, both of our organizations exist due in part to the magnetic media crisis and the problems that brings up for archivists and for individuals and just pretty much anyone who recorded anything on a magnetic tape. All of that history is being lost because of the lack of equipment and expertise, and also because all of those tapes are slowly breaking down. So a group of people in Seattle realized there weren't a lot of resources to reach out to for that. So they took a survey of the area to see who actually had an audiovisual archivist and what kind of magnetic media materials they had in their collections and what type of experience they had working with them. And they weren't that surprised by the lack of funding going to having an audiovisual archiving program at different institutions, but they were surprised by how many tapes people had and how they couldn't afford to just go to some random vendor that has other priorities at this point and charges an arm and a leg for a tape because that's not sustainable. And so MePops was born. This is one of our board members, Hannah Palin. MePops has been around since 2015 when we became a 501c3, and we work with other local organizations to digitize their magnetic media, but also to help them go from storing the analog tape to storing the digital file and how to care for those and make sure that they last a long time, but also train them through every step of that process. So the services that we offer are the analog to digital, like I mentioned. So we teach that a lot of people aren't even really sure what they have because they don't have the materials or the equipment to play them back. So we bring them in and teach them how to identify things and how to care for them, how to appraise things and determine what is worth preserving based on their organizational needs, so the scope and scale of their collections. And then we show them how to digitize the tapes with the best quality and then preserve them according to archival standards. And then for a bunch of organizations who can't afford it, we also offer them long-term storage as well as an online platform for the public to view their files. So this is just a fun little video
that we can digitize
that shows our
MePops are Laserdisc 1-inch, DVCam, Pi-8, D2, Betamax, VHS-C, VHS, U-Matic, Digibeta, Betacam SP, HDV, DVC Pro. The public is able to see files digitized at MePops on Internet Archive, where we create collections for each group so that they can, based on that institution, go in and view the content on their personal computer.
So that's where you can go if you would like to see the video. More videos digitized by MePops. So we use Internet Archive because it's free, and because with a little prodding, you can get the admins to let you have individual collections for each group. So once we started working with a few groups early on, we realized that another huge problem was having the infrastructure in-house for them to not only store the files, but to provide access to them because video files are huge. So we have used this as the best alternative because it's free and open for everyone to use. And then another thing that MePops is really focused on is the documentation and resources. And that's mostly because we don't want to hide the information from anyone, and trick them into working with us so we can make money. Quite the opposite. We want to train everyone how to do everything in the best way possible. And as things are constantly changing, we try to update that documentation as fast as possible to make sure that it's relevant, because we want to build the sustainability of actually being able to do these things for everyone, so that it seems achievable. And another great thing about it is as people start doing this, they get really excited and they have a deeper understanding of why it's so important. So they help us spread the word. So yeah, we use LTO for our long-term storage. It's just the best, cheapest alternative that we found. We're a small organization, and it seemed the best alternative to having a server where you have to pay for access and stuff like that. So as if a group ends up needing their files, we're able to access them for free really easily and transfer them to a different location for them to access them. We also do promotion and outreach. So we used to do a quarterly archival screening night with the local film forum. After COVID, we migrated that to an online platform that we do twice a month. And yeah, it's just a good way for us to showcase the materials that have been recently digitized at MePops in order to raise awareness about the importance of preserving these materials, and also just to show people all the cool stuff that we have. So our main partners are the Seattle Municipal Archives, who lets us use their space for free in exchange for using their equipment for free. And since I'm the audiovisual archivist for SMA, I basically work in the same room on the same equipment, just working for two different organizations, but doing essentially the same thing. And like I said, we also partner with the Northwest Film Forum, and that's been a really amazing opportunity because luckily they are really invested in moving image history and the importance of preserving all these materials. So that's been really fortunate because they have a much bigger reach as far as promotion and outreach goes. And then we also are part of the DVRescue project, which I'll get into more shortly. We've worked with 30 different organizations in the Pacific Northwest. And that's been a wide range of, there have been some private, smaller groups that we've worked with, and then some larger groups like the Seattle Art Museum and the Museum of History and Industry. And recently we got to work with Chihuly Studios, which was really fun. And we are also working right now on a partnership to make sure that On the Boards, which is a local dance group, or dance theater, that we can help them preserve all the many MiniDV tapes that they've had since the 80s, which is really exciting. So yeah, just different groups, and yeah, we're really excited to be able to work with artists currently now too, and we're trying to find a way to make our services more accessible to them during COVID, since we're not able to bring anyone in and train them. So the technology that we use is mostly open source. We, in order to make sure that this process is sustainable, not to beat a dead horse, but we try to make sure that everything is either open source or something that isn't that expensive for someone to use. So mainly we use Handbrake and vRecord and QC tools, and those use other libraries of open source tools. And we try to contribute as much as possible, or at least provide feedback for those tools. And MePop's main focus a lot of the time is assisting with the documentation of those items, and also making sure that they are really intuitive and easy to use for someone that's not comfortable using command line tools, because most archivists really aren't. And the flip side of this is that there's a lot of maintenance work that goes into these tools. You don't just install and update and then move on with your life. A lot of the time, there are other issues that happen, other things you have to update, or other compatibility issues that you have to sort out. And I really try to emphasize to my staff to never, ever do the Mac updates when they're working with the computers, because a lot of the time when those happen, it'll create permissions issues, because Apple likes to restrict things to make sure that you don't break your computer. But the downside of that is that it doesn't allow you to access the full capacity of your computer and use parts of it that need to be accessible for these tools to function properly and communicate with each other. So So yeah, it does require some extra work, but in exchange for encouraging people to use these, we try to provide as much, like I said, documentation to make sure that they're easy to use. And yeah, because then it's more affordable as opposed to buying a bunch of software that then becomes obsolete. And I'll get into that a little bit more shortly. So yeah, these issues can cause problems. So for this part of the presentation, I'm going to play a quick video that I just thought in a compact way really highlights the different features of DVRescue, because it's kind of like a huge project that can get really overwhelming really fast, even to like those of us who are working on it. So this is just a modified presentation that we showed at EMEA. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. So I'll get that going. Before we begin, I'm going to present a brief overview of DV videotape formats, their historical value, and significance in our field. DV tape refers to a family of digital videotape formats, including MiniDV, HDV, DVCam, and DVC Pro, commonly used from 1995 through the 2010s. The affordability and compact size of DV tape enabled many cultural, journalistic, and humanities organizations to create unique audiovisual documentation for the first time. These formats were not commonly used for media distribution. Thus, a collected DV tape is very likely a camera original, or a unique recording rather than a copy. DV tape is far more susceptible to contamination, damage, decay, and environmental factors than any other videotape format from the same time period. At the peak of its era, DV was well supported by multiple software applications, such as Live Capture Plus, DVGrab, and Final Cut Pro 7. However, now nearly every application supporting the transfer of DV is unsupported. Websites are offline, aged applications are difficult to access, and such applications do not or cannot run natively on modern computers. Premiere Pro and QuickTime can both digitize DV still, however, they do not capture the raw DV stream. In 2018, MePops and Rescapades received a research and development grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities to fund the collaborative project DVRescue. The project is working to develop procedures and tools that support migrating data from DV tapes into digital files suitable for long-term preservation. As we have laid out, this will fill an urgent need for DV tape transfer tools that can rescue content from at-risk digital videotape formats. The DVRescue project will entail 2 years of work, which started in May 2019 and was originally set to conclude in April 2021, but due to COVID-19 restrictions, it will now run until October 2021. During this time, we have been and will continue working to develop open source and freely available software, user research and testing, and create documentation to help define and perform comprehensive, automated, and easy-to-use data migration techniques. As part of the collaborative effort, MePops and Rescapades selected and invited a group of participating institutions currently collecting DV videotape to allow us to conduct research, define preservation workflows, establish standards, and develop the most impactful tools for capturing content from DV videotape. Our participating institutions include the groups represented on this slide. At the beginning of the project, we took an initial survey of our participants to gather data to aid the development process based on the sample group's specific needs. In order to determine which groups can test components related to specific formats, we gathered information regarding DV formats they had in their collections and which of these they were able to transfer with decks they currently owned in-house. To ensure that DVRescue would be compatible with the workflows of our test group, we also inquired what types of operating systems they were using along with which capturing softwares. To ensure we were able to effectively instruct users on how to use the tools and provide a variety of resources, we wanted to make sure we accommodated all learning styles and skill levels. This is a MePop standard, but we consistently poll users to ensure we are addressing their needs. The components of the DVRescue project plan include DV guidance, DV analysis, DV packager, DV capture, DV play, and DV merge. Each of these will be discussed in detail throughout this presentation. As I mentioned, one of the components of DVRescue is to develop and pilot universal training materials and tools for ready deployment using a selection of partnering institutions as a test group. In order to provide accessible training and guidance to the archival community, we are working to create documentation that addresses all learning styles and skill levels. DV guidance will comprise a sort of encyclopedia for all facets of DV videotape preservation. The documentation will be available in both on and offline formats. We'll provide video, audio, textual, and visual examples and instructions to address the following topics: background and history of DV, DV formats guide, training videos and documentation, transfer station setup instructions, shopping lists, deck guides, file care or post-capture best practices, capturing best practices, artifacts, identification and solutions, glossary, and additional resources. In order to empower organizations not currently digitizing in-house to set up DV workstations or to assist with the workflow improvement and maintenance for those who are, we are compiling resources to make the process simple, cheap, and easy. These are some examples of shopping lists we'll recommend for cleaning and repairs. They are currently available online, and this is an example of the PDF offline format. While all of these sections will be updated as needed to accommodate changes and reflect improvements and modifications, some of them, if not all, will be contribution-based living documents such as this deck guide. As much as it is my dream to have every deck ever manufactured, MePops lives in a tiny room that is shared with an office-wide copier, so that might be unrealistic. This will be a fantastic collaboration opportunity similar to AV Artifact Atlas to have people add to this list with additional decks accompanied with their experiences and the specifics of them. We will be providing setup instructions and transfer recommendations for all operating systems, including Mac, Linux, and Windows. These instructions will include specific details for all possible configurations, cords, and adapters needed for all deck outputs and available parts on multiple generations of computers. DV Play is a command line tool component of DVRescue. It is a quality control tool utilizing a player to support reviewing and inspecting the resulting data of a DV tape to file transfer in order to highlight errors and concealment that may have occurred either as a result of tape damage, issues with the tape deck, issues with the transfer, or camcorder recording errors, and aid in deciphering between them. This is an example of a training video we created for DV Play. To use DV Play, simply open the terminal and type in DV Play, and then drag in the file. Then FF Play will open a window displaying a frame-by-frame grid playback. So you'll notice that there's just video running through frame by frame, and nothing is highlighted in yellow. That means that this is a perfect capture. This test tape was recorded at MePops using a feedback loop between a DVC Pro camcorder and a tube TV, created by MePops Communication Manager Paul Seipel. If you type in dvplay-x and drag in the file, then you'll notice that a folder is created with an XML file in it, but there were no JPEGs added. That means that this is indeed a perfect capture. If you type in dvplay-m and drag in the file, everything that is highlighted in yellow has no errors, so it's the opposite of regular DV Play. But let's try a problematic file. For reference, this is a tape that I purposefully scratched to see how scratches would present in DV Play, so that we could create documentation and detect them. As you can see, there are lots and lots and lots of JPEGs that are being created through DV Play-X, and that is because there are a lot of errors because of the scratch. So let's run it through DV Play and see what that looks like. What type of errors will it highlight? And as you can see here, all those yellow lines that are running through at the beginning, that was the scratch. So if you look at the JPEGs, each JPEG is a frame that contains an error, and highlighted in yellow is where there is missing or problematic information. In this case, the information is missing because there was a scratch, and there were lots of frames that it scratched. And then if we open the file in QuickTime, we can see that all those blocks right there are signaling that information was missing, and the error concealment tried to fill in that missing information by copying frames that came prior to or after the frame that's missing the information. But since a bunch of them were missing information, it became very blocky and chunky. Part of this project will be to contribute DV artifacts to AV Artifact Atlas. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, we've had to make some adjustments to the DVRescue project. Seattle City Hall, where the MePops office is located, has been closed to the public since March and will continue to be closed until at least the end of the year. We've migrated training and workshops to gather feedback to a virtual setting. Luckily, I had the opportunity to bring home the equipment needed to assemble an at-home DV transfer station. This has enabled us to continue researching and documenting DV artifacts through rigorous testing. As we continue to develop this documentation, examples, methods of identification, and possible solutions will be contributed to AV Artifact Atlas. We will follow the platform standards of describing what each artifact looks like, possible causes, if it can be fixed, and if so, how. Each artifact will be accompanied by image and video examples, as well as how to use DVRescue tools to identify and resolve the error. Using the example that I presented during the DV Play demonstration, a scratch can be identified prior to playback during tape inspection by flipping open the cassette door to check for damage. However, if the scratch was created at a different segment, it may be deeper inside the pack and unable to be detected upon visual inspection. How do you check to rule out that the artifact is not possibly a dropout or a head clog? You can run it through DV Play. And like I demonstrated earlier, these vertical lines running through the image are a very reliable source indicating a scratch. Another way to check is to look at the JPEGs generated by DVPlayX and compare them with the same frames in your preferred player. And as you can see here, even without running through DVPlay, these error frames came one right after the other, and there's a line that goes down indicating a scratch.
From the main MePops page, you should be able to get to our blog, our codebase, and get the latest information about this project. For feedback, we highly encourage you to send an issue to our issues tracker on GitHub. From this page, you can check out a link to our daily builds. It's in the far right corner under About. Here you can download the latest and keep track of our progress as we address development work, improve the GUI, and help fix the bugs and add the features that you ask for in our issues tracker. If you're uncomfortable using GitHub, just email us. We also have a great documentation page where you can see our progress. This project is intended to provide context to not just how DVRescue, the software application, works, but a holistic approach to comprehensively managing your DV collections, from initial assessment, understanding of the formats, how to set up a transfer station, how to prepare tapes for capture, and all the tools you need to manage these physical objects. And after using DVRescue, it will provide guidance for file care, helping with artifacts and potential resolution, and additional resources to help you perform solid digital preservation work.
So the other part that I was going to show really quick is an example of the training videos that we're trying to develop more because of this remote environment. Another thing that we're now offering, which we're really excited about, is doing one-on-one remote trainings to go over all the different facets of DVRescue. And so this is just the first part of a longer repair video. So I'll just play the first part really quick, just as an example of how the different types of comprehensive things that we're going to try to include, just to make people feel like they can do it themselves. In this instructional video, we'll teach you how to repair damaged DV tapes. Inspection. As established in audio-visual archival best practices, it is important to always inspect all tapes before playback or transfer in order to detect any damage, tension issues, chemical deterioration, or contamination that needs to be addressed. This will help prevent further damage to the tape or possible damage to your deck or player. DV videotape is extremely thin and fragile, highly sensitive to contaminants, and self-deteriorates at a rate much faster than other videotape formats from the same time period. MiniDV is particularly fragile. When inspecting a tape, examine the following. Examine all parts of the tape reels that you can see through the windows on the top of the cassette. Specifically check for dirt, mold, or other contamination. Ensure recording is disabled by sliding the switch on the front of the tape to the side labeled Saved. Look for cracks or breakage along the exterior of the cassette. Gently and slowly tilt the case from side to side. If there is any rattling or you feel anything move around inside, not just the reels shifting, there is likely a piece that is loose or broken. You will need to repair or remove the loose part prior to inserting the tape into a deck. To further check the tape tension, simply press and hold the latch located on the side of the cassette and lift the anti-static guard. The tape should look smooth and taut like this. Carefully hold in place until inspection is complete. Sometimes there can be scratches, creases, or breaks, like this. You'll need to fix a break like this prior to transfer. Repair supplies. For the repair demonstrated here, you will need the following tools. 1.4 to 1.5 millimeter Phillips screwdriver. These two sizes of Phillips screwdrivers are compatible with the screws securing the cassette shells for DV formats. If a tape breaks or is contaminated, you will need to use this to open the cassette and perform repairs or cleaning. Often the screwdriver that came with an eyeglasses repair kit will be the correct size for MiniDV. Large size DVCam and DVC Pro require a slightly larger screwdriver. Make sure that your screwdriver is not magnetized, as this can result in signal interference and potential information loss. 1/4-inch splicing tape. It is important to use tape that is designed for magnetic media when repairing audio or videotape. It is specifically designed to resist age and stress. The adhesive is non-acidic to prevent the tape from breaking down or contaminating the magnetic media materials. The same tape used for splicing 1/4-inch audio tape can be used for DV. All DV formats are 1/4-inch width. 1/4-inch splicing block. A splicing block acts as a guide for both cutting and taping during a splice. The center tape channel secures the tape during use. Razor blade. A sharp razor blade is ideal for splicing. You can buy splicing tape, splicing blocks, and razor blades in a kit from a variety of retailers. Sharp scissors meant for precision trimming also work to splice the damaged DV tape. It really comes down to your preference and the type of repair you are performing. Either tool needs to be very sharp to be accurate and effective. Alternatively, you can use the scissors in addition to the razor blade and block for trimming excess tape that goes over the edge of the magnetic tape. This will be demonstrated as part of the repair instructions. It is advised that you use gloves to handle the tape. However, if your hands are small like mine, it's hard to find the correct size, and gloves that are too big make it difficult to handle the tape. Alternatively, you can use a clean microfiber cloth to gently remove oil and fingerprints on the tape when you are finished with the repair. Repair instructions. Now we're going to perform a repair on a torn tape. This will allow you to open the shell without damaging any information on the label. Lay the tape upside down on a flat surface. There are several small screws holding the two halves of the cassette together that will need to be removed with your screwdriver. Typically, MiniDV tapes have 4 screws, medium-sized tapes have 5, and large tapes will have 6. We recommend placing the screws in some sort of container so that they won't roll away. If the cassette shell is damaged, you can transfer the tape into a new one following these same instructions. So the rest of this video is mostly just a time lapse that shows the different steps because I haven't finished doing the narration yet. But yeah, like I mentioned in the previous video, MiniDV is really fragile, and these types of repairs happen to be things that are fairly common with them. But there aren't really that many great instructions online for how to do that, or they just talk you through the steps. And I had a hard time following them, to be completely honest, and it seemed like that would be a helpful resource. And another part that we feel like will be really helpful is the graphic user interface, or GUI. Because as was demonstrated in the first video, all these tools were originally created as command line tools. So it was all through a terminal on both Mac and Windows. So that's another thing that we're really excited about, is the capability that this project has to be cross-platform. So it can be, all the stuff I'm demonstrating is on a Mac because that's what I own. But there's also some development still happening with getting it into a Linux and a Windows platform. There's been some different struggles with those, but we're coming to the conclusion that while it might be a little bit of a struggle at first to set up, that it could be a much cheaper option to purchase a refurbished PC and set it up with a DV card, and it will ultimately cost a lot less than buying a Mac. So instead of having it just be command line tools, we've been trying to migrate it all into a user interface so that it's more intuitive and easier for everyone to use. And also, in my opinion, it's more efficient. So right now you can download DVRescue as an actual application, and it'll show up in your applications folder, which is really exciting. And this came out on the 20th of this month. And so let me get to the actual program. Hopefully it's not still loading. Oh, it looks like it is. It's still loading, so that's a little problematic. So this file was about 500 megabytes. So it has taken almost an hour now to load. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But all the different features here, you can see are transfers, so capturing the tape from an analog format to a digital format. And then analysis, which is what I was trying to load this tape in here to demonstrate for you the different ways that it shows what it looks like. Because there will be this list right here, but the analysis will show all the different things that could possibly go wrong with the tape and help you determine whether or not that was something that's just recorded on the tape. So DV camcorders, especially MiniDV, were really fragile. And so if someone was, say, like documenting a parade or a protest, and someone bumped into them and knocked their camcorder down, that camcorder is probably going to end up recording a lot of errors, which this camcorder that was used for these different demo tapes that we used was actually part of the WTO protests, and one of the filmmakers donated it to me Pops, but it had recording errors, but it was hard to tell initially without running it through a program if it was just something that was wrong with the tape or if it was a head clog or a different issue or an issue from the transfer, but it ended up being just that one of the heads on the actual camcorder was broken. So with all those different things that can go wrong, it's really helpful to have a resource like this when it loads that will show you the different parts of the tool and what's wrong with them, and the different, it has different icons that will pop up that will show you what is creating the error. And another thing that can go wrong with DV, and particularly with MiniDV, are bit concealment errors or like other types of error concealment that the tape has and the decks have built into them to try to fix issues that are happening within the data stream. And so that will just tell you that that error was created through that process. And then we also have a packaging tool, and that's really helpful to break up different recordings that actually have separate parts. So a lot of people, to save money, would record like a birthday party and then a Christmas event or just their kids playing outside. And using timestamps or different stop and start markers within the recording, DVRescue can break those up into different actual pieces, like actual different videos. And then you can tell it to break it down in different ways. Oh, and another thing that we're really excited about is with this analysis tool, it'll show you all the different frames that have a problem. And then you can determine whether or not it was caused by a head clog or something else. And then you can re-record different parts of the tape and merge them together to create one perfect capture.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm so bummed that this is not loading.
That's okay.
But yeah, so the analysis will also show audio errors, which can be concealed in different ways depending on a deck. This one that I'm about to, that will hopefully load soon. When it was played in this one deck that I have that's actually like a fancier deck, it creates this just like buzzing sound. So I'll make sure to turn down the volume before we look at it. But then when it was put into a cheaper portable deck, it was just silent. So it's not, if you hadn't made that recording and you weren't sure what was happening, having it just be silent, I mean, I would probably make the assumption that someone just didn't turn on the microphone. Whereas this will show you that it's an actual audio error. And then the idea with these two, they have different color coding markers that will help you determine whether or not there's enough errors that you need to maybe try to recapture the tape or clean your deck, or whether or not they are something you can fix. So yeah, And then, yeah, that merge tool, I think that is going to be in this packaging section, which right now is just blank because it doesn't have any tools in it. This is an example of what the transfer will look like. So right now it says it's searching for a device. And that's because I don't have one plugged into my computer right now. But another really cool thing about DV versus other analog formats is you don't need to have a video card. So that means you can do multiple captures at once. So basically as many decks as you can plug into one computer, you can capture that many tapes, just using the right tools. We've noticed with different adapters, especially for USB-C, that you really do have to suck it up and pay $50 for the Apple one, because the other ones that we've tried out will either work once, or a lot of them are no longer actually compatible for transferring data. They're just purely a visual adapter. So not very helpful. And then two, as you load different files in here, or if you're capturing different files, they'll show up in this list up top. That's still loading. This settings tool, this initial thing that's popping up is asking you where you want files to be saved. And then it'll also like prompt you to go through several other questions just about what do you want to name the file, if you were capturing, and yeah. And then the help page will eventually link directly to our help page online. But since it's still a beta stage, it's not quite there yet. Another part of this project is we'll be starting a phase 2 in October after this first part finishes. And it's called the Digital Video Commander project. And so through all of the work that we've done on DVRescue, we've learned that there are a lot more capabilities for capturing other analog tapes that have data streams, such as D2, Betamax, SX, Digibeta, Digital 8, and HDV. We thought we were going to be able to work with HDV for this project, and we can as far as capture goes, but we cannot use any of the analysis tools because of the extra components that are in it. I don't think I included it in here, but when you run it through DV Play, it does some really crazy things because it's not sure what to do with the HDV part of the stream. And another thing is currently we're pretty sure that we can transfer Digital 8 using the DVRescue as it is now. And that's because there are a lot of similarities between Digital 8 and MiniDV. It uses the same compression and video standards. The only difference is that MiniDV is 6mm and Digital 8 is 8mm. But if we had a deck like this that had a FireWire output, you could potentially plug it into your Mac and just use DVRescue to capture the DV stream that's included in the tape. However, I've scoured everywhere. I cannot find a Digital 8 tape in any of our collections or any of the other groups' collections that we currently have. So we sent out a call and we're hoping to get an example so we can actually test it out. Yeah, so theoretically it should work. And if not, it will work for that next project. So let me see if it's still loading. But yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Fantastic. I'm so excited to see, even just if it doesn't end up loading, just seeing how it looks right now. It looks great.
Thanks.
Yeah. This is, we start out with VHS with the MemLab network, and then really if you want to expand beyond that, the most obvious place to go would be MiniDV and or Digital 8, because those were really ubiquitous formats for at all levels of like people, whether they were filmmakers versus home movie, just, you know, sort of looking for a home movie format, or just documenting like, yeah, community events, lectures, things like that.
It's the most common one we've come across.
Yeah.
And said, yeah, like the Seattle channel, the local municipal channel, I have thousands and thousands of them. And just the other day, they were like, oh, we have like a couple thousand more. Do you still want those?
Wow.
But then, yeah, also that was the most common home movie format after a while, but there's a lot of them.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing with the digital 8, it's like that the clamshell, whatever that you showed. The neat thing about it is that it can also, you know, play back high 8, the non-digital versions of, you know, I know, do you think that, I mean, I know that, you know, DVRescue is all about the DV stream, but I mean, you need to test it, I know, but I'm just curious what you thought, like if you tried to do like a high 8 tape in there.
I haven't, but actually, as I was putting this presentation together, I was wondering if that would be a possibility. So theoretically, I think that it would be able to do video 8 and high 8, because it would just be pulling the audio and the video from the FireWire.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you'd be able to use the same analysis tools,
right?
But I'm pretty sure you could capture it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I will test that out too and let you know.
I was gonna say, do you need a high 8 tape? I'll send you one of those too.
I do have a lot of those.
Okay, cool.
Thank you though.
Yeah, it's one of the main things we ask is, or tell people, is not to, because the majority of our network partners use Macs, and that's kind of what we tell people to do for right now because it fits in the budget. But it's just like, don't update the operating system. Like, it's not going to be helpful for us, for our purposes, especially our workflows. I think I've said this before to you, Libby, is our workflows right now are using iMovie.
Oh, okay.
With MiniDV to capture it. So, and that's like, not all of the partners in the network have MiniDV at all, but at DCPLs, at least, it's utilizing iMovie, which like is not sustainable because iMovie is not going to be around forever, and many times doesn't work on like newer computer. It's also, as you mentioned, it's not. Can you kind of explain in more detail about the difference between what DVRescue is doing and iMovie?
Yeah, of course. So iMovie is, I guess I should have had a better visual example of this, but basically, so there are 3 streams basically for a digital video. So there's the audio, the video, and the data. And it sort of seems like, well, who cares? But that contains like a ton of really, really helpful information, like as long as it was input correctly, time and date stamps, which can be really helpful for documenting and preserving the material, especially because you can just pull up all that information without like scanning through the tape and trying to figure out when it was. That, as a sidebar, that capability actually will make it so that with DVRescue, you can take tapes that were like all shot on the same date and sort of line them up. So the example that we're working on right now is all this footage we have from the WTO protests. So it's like all these different people's cameras, and you could sort of like use it as sort of a timeline and go through and see the different camera angles that happened at that time. But the data also helps a lot with figuring out issues that happen. And like I demonstrated, there are a lot of different things that happen. And all that to say that iMovie is just taking the audio and the video streams as is. And so that will make it so that the error concealment will keep doing its job, but not quite as well because it's not able to communicate as well. And also all of that information is being lost, which means you won't be able to use it for the analysis or the merge or any of the other tools that we have within DVRescue, which I mean, it is fine, but it also makes it, you're just not preserving all of the information, and you're not getting the best possible copy that you then could make even better using these analysis and merging and packaging tools.
Yeah, do you think that the general public would be interested in it, and or is that something you're thinking for like outreach, is to kind of, because obviously like AV archivists, like totally our jam, right? But how do we make that, because a big thing for the Memory Lab Network is like providing all this information to folks, giving them the best option, or access to the best, and then, or as close to the best as we can, and then they can make that decision. But like, yeah, how do we explain all this to them in a way that's like comprehensive and understandable without being an AV archivist?
Yeah, no, and I mean, that's a really good question. I actually had a conversation recently with these two artists and that group on the boards that I mentioned, where they were sort of reaching out and asking about writing grants to get funding to digitize their tapes. And we had digitized a couple tapes for this one artist. And she was, I don't think she was trying to be rude, but she was just like, I mean, I respect what you guys are doing, but it's expensive to work with you. And I just think that I've rented all these decks and we're just setting them all up. All these different volunteers are using them. And you pretty much just press play and go. And I was like, oh, no, that's not right. But so she and I have had sort of like ongoing conversations about that. And I totally respect like the scrappy do-it-yourself situation. And I was glad she felt empowered to do that. But I ended up just sitting her down and showing her some different examples after she sent me some of the files that she wasn't sure what was wrong with them. And I was like, so because you captured it using Premiere was mainly what she was using, that and that program is really similar to iMovie in the sense that it's just capturing the audio and the video. And there were a lot of dropouts and different weird things that were happening. And so I was just trying to explain to her that she wasn't getting all of that information. And unless she wanted to like keep redoing these tapes to try to get a better capture, she might want to try using a different tool. And I demonstrated to her what that could look like with one of the tapes. And it was that type of like showing her exactly what it could do. And even though it was a little more tedious, it was getting a better file. And like she worked with Anne Shelton, who was a fairly famous local filmmaker who recently died. And so I think that also really compounded it, where she was like, okay, well, I need to preserve these for everyone to see them, and it needs to be the best that it can be. And I also explained to her, like, this is free, like you can still do it by yourself. And I'm more than willing to help you in any way I can, but this is just a better option. If you want it to be fast and easy and you don't really care if those problems are there, then you can use pretty much whatever you want. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of, we work in the same way where we can show everyone the options that they have, tell them the pros and cons. Same with like file formats. Some people are just really want to have like a uncompressed MOV huge file, which is fine. But we just try to demonstrate like, look how much space it takes up versus this. So yeah, just like that side-by-side quality comparison seemed to be really helpful for her, which I can relate to because I'm visual as well.
Yeah, I think that the, especially when there's problems and with a tape, and then saying like, reiterating that MiniDV has a lot of problems. Like, like don't think that you're just it's not gonna be my tapes, it's like probably will. And for a memory lab, it's like someone absolutely is going to be bringing in problematic tapes. So having something to help them with that is really great. And the other thing, that you mentioned that made me think of how we might kind of configure this for the public is, as you mentioned, the 3 streams, like the information, the metadata stream doesn't like make the file like bigger or anything that would, it's pretty negligible, right? Like, so yeah, that's another thing where it's like, why don't you, it's not like it's going to make it huge or anything. And then what does the, like what would be the best in your opinion, like what it spits out, right? Like instead of like going for an uncompressed or.
Another thing that's different with DV versus even like DV Pro, like the higher scaled ones that more professionals used, the stream is still compressed, so you can't uncompress it. And that was part of like the selling point of it, was like, oh, look, it's already compressed, ready to go. And like that has its own problems, but not ones you can fix. But so having that additional information can make it so that it looks better because it's already compressed. And then we've been talking a lot about like once you capture it and you've used that information, what's the best format to store the videos in. And because like we at MePops and at SMA have just been storing them as those raw DV files because it has all the information. But we've been experimenting to see like if it is better to then create an MOV and also have that DV file just to make sure that it like is sustainable, because it seems like sometimes in long-term preservation in certain circumstances the DV starts to like degrade almost the thing, and which is like a whole other great issue we all get to deal with. But so we're trying to figure that out so that we can make the best recommendation. But yeah, having that originally, especially because it's compressed, having all that information so that you can do the analysis and any fixing that needs to happen is really helpful. But yeah, like you said, it sounds like not that important. But yeah, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and why not?
Yeah, and this is a free tool. Like, yeah, this can be done for free. And yeah, from the looks of it, that thing where it's going to be, you know, you don't have to drag and drop things into Terminal or know about how to use Terminal. You can just use the application, the GUI. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really excited. I didn't know it was going to be like that till I opened it today. I was like, oh, wow, it's already in my applications.
Oh, wow, today was the day. That's great. Cool. Yeah, it's really lovely. Yeah, I don't know, I'm just like, how was the DV degrading? Like in what ways? I'm so curious.
I still am not 100% clear about this. It just Dave was recently saying that sometimes if it's stored that way, it just like is susceptible to being corrupt more easily than an MOV because of the way it's wrapped. And I mean, we've been capturing things as DV and then that being the preservation file for like 5 years now. Mm-hmm. But I'm still, and like I've accessed the DV when I've needed to make like a higher resolution access copy and things like that. Mm-hmm. I haven't run into any problems, but that's not to say that they aren't there. And so when he said that the other day, Andrew and I were both like, so what recommendation should we be making to people? He was like, let's experiment more and figure it out. So we're still working on it. So I'm not 100% clear. That's a really long answer to your question. Sorry.
No, that makes complete sense. Any other like thoughts from you on the future for this, next steps? I know you talked about the next project, which is really exciting, but yeah.
Well, one thing really quick too about the DV versus MOV for the preservation copy. One thing that you will be able to do if you use the packaging tool in DVRescue to separate out the files by timecode or start-stop markers is that you can unpackage them later. So you will be able to transfer it back to a DV file with the information in there. It's basically just changing the wrapper. So it will still contain all the DV information. So it's odd, and hopefully we'll have an update on that soon. I'm really excited about the next project, mostly because we also have a lot of digital beta cams, because I know a lot of groups use that as their preservation copy for film a lot, and at least at SMA, we can't really afford to redigitize our film, but we can afford to just digitize the tapes in-house. And sometimes the film's degraded, like obviously not as fast as tape, but it just doesn't look quite as good as it did when it was transferred in like 1995 or whatever. So having that tape and being able to transfer it and at least have like a decent preservation copy would be great. But there are odd artifacts and things in there that I've never quite figured out how to fix. So I'm really I don't know if you've ever run into this, but like there are like weird lines with the movement that happened with the film to tape transfer, and it was just like the difference of frame rate in the recording trying to make like this weird like basically fill in blank information, and it ends up looking like really jagged. But I'm really excited for the capabilities that it might address with that. And yeah, I mean, the digital 8 thing and then possibly doing all high 8 would be really cool. And I am really excited for the analysis tool too, to be working within this thing instead of like, dragging and dropping all the files and having to go through everything that way. And having sort of like those visual signals that I think will really help people learn like what to look for and to know whether or not they need to redo something, because like as great as like QC tools is, and I love that and it's amazing, because there's no data stream, it can't send signals to it. So it's sort of up to you to like look at this information provided and make a determination about whether or not you can or should fix something. But this will sort of tell you, which I think will be helpful, especially for like training people and or just people who aren't really sure what to be looking for, because there's so many things, like so many different things to be looking for, that being able to scan it will be much more efficient, I think, for everyone.
Absolutely. That's where I see it fitting in with, MemoryLab and like, library users much more easily, because they're like, okay, cool, it's telling me what to do,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for this project. It's amazing work that you all are doing, and like the resources are just really great, like very beautiful to look at and like fun too, but like super informative. So I don't know if the thing happened to load yet, if the example.
Let me check.
You never know.
Oh, it's still loading. Well, when it's done, I'll take a little video of it and I'll send it.
Great. Yeah, I can incorporate that into the into our recording for the thing. So
yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, I mean, part of this project too is we're supposed to travel and help you guys do some setup stuff and training. So we're still hoping that'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. There's still a few more years, right? So now. Yeah, I know. Fingers crossed. Totally.
Yeah. But yeah, too, like if you guys end up wanting to dive more into it sooner, Andrew and I are gonna create a sign up sheet so people can have us like do a Zoom and walk them through.
Oh, great. That would be great. Yeah, because we might, and I mean, if we have any library partners, especially from our first cohort, probably, who maybe want to do that, you'd be available, maybe?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, great, awesome. And you had your slide with your contact info, so cool.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Libby. Really, really appreciate it. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, cool. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Here is the latest version of the DVRescue Graphic User Interface, or GUI. DVRescue is currently available as a set of command line tools, and we are working to convert these into a single downloadable application. The software will be compatible on Mac, Linux, and Windows operating systems. Eventually, the GUI will contain all of the same functions as the command line tools, including DV Capture or Transfer, DV Play and DV Graph or Analysis, DV Packager, DV Merge, DV Guidance, or Help, as well as debugging and settings menus. Currently, the analysis tool is operating in the GUI. You can import files transferred from DV tapes into the program for quality control review. Simply click the Add Files button and you can select as many files as you need to check for artifacts or issues. Once imported, you can review each file one at a time, along with all of the error metadata collected by DVRescue and generated
for visual analysis in the graph and table views. For those of you who use DV Analyzer, this is a vastly improved replacement. Icons and color coding highlight different types of errors or markers in the file in order to intuitively assist the user in determining the cause, if a solution exists, or if the tape would benefit from a second transfer. As the video plays back, the cursor moves along the plot of the graph and down the table to corresponding rows. You can also jump to a specific place in either the playback viewer, graph, or table, and all three will move in unison to the same position. Download DVRescue and try it out for yourself.